Good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking. My name is Onkgopotse JJ Tabani. We are live in Auckland Park here at the SABC in Johannesburg. We welcome all our viewers from all over the continent as we dip our heads for the 3 firefighters who died in a Gauteng government building this week. We condemn the neglect by government in this regard. There's truly no excuse over this. Yet again, lives are lost at the hands of inept politicians and officials. Condolences to the families of the deceased. But tonight we are talking about all matters higher education. In December 2017, the then President Jacob Zuma hurriedly announced that there will be free higher education from 2018. This move was seen as opportunistic and merely meant to influence the outcome of the NASREC elective conference. Of course, the struggle for free higher education has been going on forever. In the meantime, those who are meant to implement this far-reaching resolution seem not to be ready. We have since seen a lot of instability at NSFAS with the chairperson of that body resigning recently. There was also frustration at institutions of higher learning who also seem to have been blindsided by that particular decision. There's been progress, though, lately, and to make me understand it all, my guest tonight is Buti Manamela, the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, who we're going to talk frankly to just now. But before that, Bulelani Philip, my colleague, took a look at what's been going on out at NSFAS.
NSFAS is an institution under administration. Executive Officer Stephen Zwane was placed on suspension last week on charges of maladministration. The newly appointed administrator is cleaning house and preparing to redesign the institution. He's been able to reduce the backlog of applications from 68,000 to just under 50,000.
I'll be looking at appointing a number of experts to assist with that, and then we will be able to be much more effective in our response. Because I must tell you, in the current rate we're going now, we actually have to check. There's an enormous amount of checks that we have to do to make sure that we don't pay it to the wrong people.
You're going to email us a certified copy of your ID?
Applicants have to apply online for 2019. They must include an identification copy, proof of household income, and a consent form to verify the income. Free education is for students from homes where salaries are less than 350,000 a year. The closing date is November 30. The 30 billion rand fund is heading for a qualified audit opinion this year. Bulelani Philip, SABC News, Cape Town.
Welcome, Buti. Thank you so much for joining me. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
How's it been going? New job now in higher education?
Well, technically, because it's close to a year now. In fact,
so it's not new.
Yeah, so it's been a year.
Yeah.
But I think what's more exciting is the fact that I mean, as a student activist, I've been on the other side of the iron rod.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
I'm in the receiving
agitating
side
for
now.
this free education. You're a big agitator for that. And then come 2007 with the Polokwane conference, all of us thought this is a victory, but it's been almost 10 years before this announcement by the president in December. Yeah. Did that take you by surprise? You had already in that department as deputy minister. Did it take you by surprise that here's December, what was it, the 20th? I mean, it was almost at the end of the year, and a big decision like this was announced. Yeah.
Look, I mean, I think firstly, I think it took quite a long time. And a whole range of justifications were being put by government on why it's not being implemented. And the patience of students, just dissipated with time. And I think that pressure that was building up for years, actually, then erupted in 2016. And I think we need to understand it also within the context of other factors. We just, we take this resolution, we get hit by a global economic crisis. Families...
Almost immediately.
Almost immediately. Yes. Household incomes are reduced. pressure, especially on the middle and upper class families, and the demand for higher education increases, and I think that's why we saw the eruption in campuses. The president then set up a commission of inquiry, which comes up with resolutions, but also makes a commitment that by 2018, we will make an announcement. So as part of the build-up, task teams were, set up, led by the presidency, which then culminated into the announcement that was made in December. Of course, there was no indication that the announcement will be made, but a lot of work had been done building up to that, to that announcement. All that we had to do was to make sure that we put in place systems, we engage with the relevant stakeholders, we activate institutions, university vice chancellors, the universities themselves and TVET colleges, the NSFAS and everybody.
Okay, we'll come to that now. I just want us to take a step back. Does it mean for you, and you can talk frankly to me about this, that almost like switched off activism a little bit after that Polokwane resolution? Because, I mean, if you look at the fact that post-2009, the Minister of Higher Education was actually a member of the South African Communist Party, of which you were at that point, I think you were in YCL.
As the National Secretary of the YCL.
Yeah, I mean, we can have a big ideological debate, but here was an example of what socialism could actually, in the midst of capitalism, could be seen to be working. Yeah. Right, and yet it took 10 years to get to that point. And when it eventually happened, it was muddled in all kinds of seeming opportunism about it. Secondly, it looked like the fees must fall, almost hijacked, if you like, something that was already a resolution of the ANC. 8 years prior. Yeah. What's your reflection about that, Buti? I mean, especially in the midst of people not believing that on the land question, this is going to be implemented, because again, another radical resolution that has been lying, if you like, fallow, for lack of a better word, for years.
Look, I mean, the first thing that the Department of Higher Education and Training under then Minister Blake Nzimande did was to set up a commission to look at the cost implication for fee-free higher education. And I think within a space of 12 to 18 months, that commission gave him a report. And indications were that if you were to wholly fund free education in South Africa, it would not be affordable. And therefore, engagements were entered into as to what sort of concessions must be made in order to afford, particularly the poorest of the poor. And that's why the notion of fee-free higher education for the poor came into place. At the time I wasn't in government, but part of the things that were happening included what is, priority for government at the time. But I think also we need to understand that higher education generally in South Africa has been on the decline. 1996, we implement a macroeconomic policy that says we're cutting on social spending, huge cuts on university grants, and which necessitate an increase in student fees and all of that. So all of this were a culmination of a whole range of factors. And I think, the question of, what goes into the budget, what do we afford, what don't we afford, whilst on the other side, as the youth and student movement, we're pushing even much harder, frustrated by the fact that the Polokwane resolution is not being implemented. And I think ultimately, there was no way that government was not going to implement fee-free higher education. All that the Higher Commission...
it looks like in 2007 and immediately thereafter, the machinery was not geared to implement it. Because you're waiting 8 years even to investigate whether it's feasible, how much it's going to cost, there seems to be an issue there. But I want us to talk then about, now the resolution is there, how do we gear the sector to try and implement it? We're talking to Buti Manamela, he's Deputy Minister of Higher Education, and we're just trying to make me understand how we're tackling the implementation of free education in South Africa. Stay tuned.
Amakhazi asibulele since kusile la Fatimbawula la kuyabanda le goli, and then Sesize sadecide ukuthi sivele sibase umlilo khona sokhona nokufudumala kusebenzeki nakahle.
Police killers are not coming from the sky. They are actually coming from the communities where we are. So it cannot be correct.
We regret what has happened because the strike affects everyone. So is electricity. Electricity also affects everyone. It's a community problem.
We are owing ESCOM. Currently, we could not reconcile the bill, what they bill us, with theirs. We could not agree.
I always say entrepreneurship are those that see opportunities where others don't.
You can't give me a bad deal. You can't cheat me. Because I'll read my own contract. I know what's going on in my contract. But I've never been afraid of a challenge. I'm one of those people.
I didn't know the difference between my money and the business money. Whatever money that came in used to be your money. You'd go shopping, driving all these cars, and we were forgetting to pay creditors.
If we're more diligent with how we utilize our money. So the great thing with this and my other job, being an advocate, is that in both industries, I sort of own my time.
Today, we're doing inner city buildings, we're doing commercial projects, and we're doing property development even within the township scale, and even now going to the next end of now even establishing offices in the States to be able to raise capital to invest in Africa.
Keep it locked to Bupilong every Saturday at 5:30.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking with me, Onkopotse JJ Tabane. You can follow our show on hashtag Frankly Speaking. You can also tweet us at JJ Tabane at SABC News Online. With the, what you said about the decline of funding for education is fascinating. How does this change, this resolution change that picture? Yep. Because if there was a decline, it means there was a recognition that there are limited resources. Yep. Is this thing realistic? We've just hit a recession now, you know. Will this make you go back to your drawing board to look at it again?
Look, firstly, I don't think there's any turning back with regards to the implementation of free education. Now, there are various factors. The first, which is the popular one, is student funding, student fees, wherein government has committed to pay fully the cost of education for children whose parents' joint income is less than 350,000 rands, and that constitutes 90% of South African households. That was based on Stats SA. Now, an allocation of about 24 billion rand was made for this financial year. So the second component of that is
this was post the announcement. This was post the announcement.
This was post the announcement. You know, with the 2018 budget. So it was, you know, the allocations were made in retrospect. So that's the first leg. The second leg is the various interventions in terms of infrastructure grant. I mean, most of the university and TVET college infrastructure is appalling. You know, so about 4 billion rand was injected into TVET college infrastructure for the medium-term expenditure and 12 to 13 billion rands for university infrastructure. Now, the third component, which is crucial. So what happened is with over time, when universities' grants from the government was in the decline, that was you know, compensated by rising student fees, and that's why the cost of higher education in our country is so high compared to other you know, economies. So direct grants, particularly to historically disadvantaged universities, has been on the increase in order to assist universities to be able to cope with the process. In total, you know, the department's budget has now risen to about 87 billion rands, and most of those is composed of transfers to universities.
But if you just look at free education in totality, because you had to make some kind of a homework to say this is what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Does the 24 billion cover it? Almost 50, because my understanding was that NSFAS is partially funded. In other words, you have a shortfall. And what are the implications of that shortfall? Are we still looking at a situation where there isn't enough access, or at least the free education thing is not fully implemented as we are now on September of the first year of its implementation?
Look, I mean, the NSFAS have made payments now close to 20 billion of the 24 billion that has been allocated to them. Their projection is that at the end of the academic year, close to 510,000 students from both universities and TVET colleges would have been funded. Now, this is based on the students who have obviously applied and have been granted spaces in universities. So as of the current medium-term expenditure and based on the projections, yes, it is affordable. Of course, compromises had to be made. Adjustments in terms of budget had to be made. Value-added tax had to be increased, and all of that.
It's something I just don't understand, but I'm sure it's not for today. It's not for today because, wouldn't education be something that would immediately then have to be excluded from a value-added tax?
Well, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is for the state to raise, capital for the fiscus. I mean, money for the fiscus. Certain compromises had to be made. Money had to be taken from here and there in order to.
And what about historical debt? One of the things that impoverishes students or those who just graduated is having to sit with this debt that you must now pay and so on. How has that been accommodated in this whole resolution on free education?
So the then President Jacob Zuma instructed the Minister of Higher Education and Training and the Minister in the Presidency and Treasury, Minister of Finance, to look at the component of historical debt. How much is it and what is it that can be done in order to deal with that. But as is now, everyone who owes NSFAS is encouraged to pay into NSFAS, or owes their institutions. I mean, of course, concessions were made in 2016 where government paid, a component of the students were studying at the time, their university or NSFAS debt. But as is now, the minister is due to make a pronouncement.
Do you think the issue of the other 10%, meaning people who don't fall within the category of 300,000 income and so on, do you think that's splitting hairs? Because there are people who are saying, why don't you just say free education for all? Anybody who wants to study can go there, because it's such a tiny percentage to sort of now be seen not to be accommodating everyone. What's your particular ideological approach to that issue?
Look, I think the point is that those who can pay, should be able to pay. I am able to afford, and I mean, there are obviously those parents whose, who fall within the bracket between 350,000 and 600,000. And IFSAP, which is a fund looking at parents within that range, was established, which is a collaboration between government and the private sector.
There may be people who have more than 2 children,
exactly,
but who fall within that category.
There are all those dynamics, and therefore IFSAP is looking at that component. And I think what is also important is that we still encourage the private sector to continue through their scholarships and grants and bursaries and all of that to provide, to help provide for, those students who do not qualify for free higher education.
One of the things that puzzled everyone is that it seemed like when this announcement was made, even NSFAS was not ready. This is over and above the fact that there seems to be instability at NSFAS. I know that there was an anecdotal thing about some student who was given 40 million rand instead of maybe 20,000. I don't know what
14,000 actually.
Instead of 14,000.
Well, not even 40, 1,400.
That was quite bizarre. But it sort of highlighted that there may be difficulties there. The chairperson, a very respected business leader, Mr. Basana, left the post. So after the break, I want to talk about the stability of NSFAS as a driver of the funding of this higher education. But we are on Frankly Speaking. We're talking to Deputy Minister Buti Manamela. Stay tuned for the continuation and the wrap-up of that conversation.
are losing the best of kids. People that are fathers or pastors that comes from a church.
No taxi, nothing. We were not notified. I get to town, there's nothing.
Is he facing conspiracy? What is the nature of the corruption charges that he faces? But if it's a blatant kind of corruption case, he faces a potential 15 years in prison. And lest we forget, his father is in the dock in a few weeks' time, also facing corruption charges. So those parallels between father and son and the regime change in South Africa and what's happening with our courts at the moment will be something that is profoundly interesting, I think, to all South Africans.
Minister, they don't care first about the backyarders, and then we are sick and tired, and we are fighting, multi-family issues. That's why we want to go and build our shacks so that we can live with our children.
Our province is on the move all the time. The more houses are delivered, the more people move into our province.
Isibhlungu ngaphakathi ngiko sesenza intuthu njengaphakathi kwasempumelelo. Izindlu zethu enelempa angeke iziphele singakazitholi izindlu.
My opinion, Mr. Infantino and FIFA, everybody agreed that VAR is not going well. It's not going well, that's the reality. There's a lot of complaints. We just need to know who is refereeing the game, who take decisions in the game. We have the right to know, the people have the right to know.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. We're talking to Deputy Minister Buti Manamela. He used to be a student activist, otherwise called Isdlamolilo, during his days, making all sorts of demands about no fee increments, and we used to say moratorium on fee increases, Buti. Now you got to sort it out now. NSFAS, what's happening there? Asana resigning, did you try to keep him? Why did he resign? And why is it, it seems to be a little bit of a shaky boat there at NSFAS?
Yeah, look, I think he had his own reasons, but I think the point is that the board and the executive for not this year, even from last year, there were a lot of backlogs. A lot of students were not paid. The triangulation between the student data, the NSFAS data, and the university data was just not working. Campuses were just on fire,
But I think it was becoming too much for him to handle. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, he said that, he thinks that he should leave because of the reasons that he's provided.
Yeah.
But also on our side, we were not happy with
the progress there.
With the progress, therein, and what the minister and the department have been doing all along is to ensure that we give the support to the NSFAS executive and the board for them to, to implement. So as soon as he resigned, the board then asked the minister to appoint an administrator.
Okay.
And I'm quite excited because I went there.
Why didn't they just appoint a chairperson to replace him? I mean, it sends a strange feeling to say administrator straight after a chairperson resigns. Why not just replace the chairperson? Was it because there were deeper problems there beyond just the chairperson leaving?
Yeah, I mean, that's the report that they gave to the minister, that, look, the problems are much bigger. And remember, it was not only the chair who had resigned. I think there were one or two other board members who had also resigned. And so now with the new administrator, I went to see him on Tuesday just to get a sense of what's happening. And also after seeing him, I went to 2 or 3 other institutions in the country. So I'm quite excited with the progress. I mean, from the 60,000 backlog of students who were not paid, already within a period of 14 days, more than 22,000 of those have been paid.
You've lifted the freeze because apparently they had frozen the allocations at some point.
The allocations have been freezed. About 2.1 billion was paid last week to universities, and that's been dispersed to to students. We also opened for new registration on Monday. And about 180,000 people have already applied. Our projection is that for 2019 we may have close to 800,000 applications and 1 million in 2020.
With the remaining time,
the demand.
Interesting that you're talking about the demand rising. It's clear we can't throw money at this problem of higher education. We're just talking of air. That 49% dropout rate, this is disastrous.
Look, I mean, it's quite concerning. And we want students to understand that although they may not personally be paying the money, it's from their parents, it's from the tax pool. I mean, it's money that could be doing other things, but the nation is using it to educate.
How do you analyze 49% dropout rate, though?
Look, firstly, I think it's, most of the students, it's wrong career choices. Some students, we all want to flock to universities, and when it's not working, we then go to colleges.
I thought that has changed from our days. I mean, I wanted to be a doctor, and there was no bone of a doctor.
And then we also need to strengthen our psychosocial support for students.
Which means what in simple language?
It means, you from Hamatala and you're studying in UCT, you're alone, you don't know anybody there, and all of that. So the institution need to build structures and institutions that support students, in that regard. People don't fail just because they're stupid. But it's a whole range of factors.
But is there enough you're doing to make sure that people don't think automatically they must go to a university?
Yes. I mean, I've personally been going throughout the whole country, talking to, grade 12, talking to parents, talking to everybody, saying to them, make sure that we are certain about our career choices. And I think what's also crucial is we're finalizing, the responsibilities of students as it relates to this free education. And we're hoping that the student leadership will help us to make sure that the throughput rate is increased, and the success rate is increased, both at TVET and at university
the TVET
level.
thing,
Otherwise, this will be a waste.
Are you promoting that more? Because people tend to see it as a bit of a demotion. If I was, at university and suddenly next year I'm studying at TVET, my friends would just laugh at me and say, hey, but why didn't you make it there?
Look, we really are. We're training lecturers. We are improving infrastructure. We, uplifting the face of their workshop. And generally, we're improving the quality of TVET colleges. About 5-7 years ago, it was only 300,000 students at TVET colleges. Now, as we speak, we have close to 700,000 students who are studying at TVET college, and the objective is to, hit the 1 million mark. TVETs are the future of the country.
Short answer, are you happy with the governance at universities, your councils and so on? We don't have any controversies there these days.
Well, we're quite happy. I mean, and obviously you can't put a general, judgment on that.
But there's nothing on fire.
But we're generally
happy. TUT seems to be falling apart. The students being short and what have you. Are you having a handle on that?
Yes, of course. I mean,
governing well there?
Yes, in fact, the minister had a meeting with the chair of council. We're actually looking into that. We're quite worried, and our condolences to the family. We're quite worried that we lost a student there. But it's something that's in our radar, not only TUT, DUT.
You want to stick to this portfolio after 2019? You think?
Well, that's the decision of the president and, importantly, of the electorate.
Wishing you well, man, Buti. All the best with what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
All right. That was Buti Manamela there, sharing with me his own perspective about what's going on in higher education in South Africa. I hope you found that useful. But until we talk frankly again, hi Papa.